Hello everybody, my name is Professor Malice. I'm an esports coach, broadcaster, and event organizer by trade, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. I'm going to be giving a lecture or a lesson on conflict resolution strategies that you can employ as mentors of the Underdunk First Steps series. This is going to be a condensed and shortened video that is supposed to give you the precise tools that you need to succeed. There is a lot more detail that I can go into that I won't be getting to today. If there's a topic that you're interested in or you would like to learn more about, I encourage you to research it yourself or reach out to me so we can schedule a one-on-one meeting or a workshop. Without further ado, we're going to move on to our first topic called rules of engagement. The rules of engagement is a concept that comes from a book called How to Fight, written by Thích, who is a Buddhist monk. And what the rule engagements are an agreement between those within a conflict about how they will conduct themselves while trying to resolve that conflict. Usually for mediation, coming up with an agreement of how they're going to settle this and how they're going to talk to each other is what you would do. However, here at Underdunk, we have something already in place. We already have rules of engagement, which is going to be that player agreement that has been written that everybody has to agree to and adhere to in order to be within the Underdunk First Step series. As mentors, it's important to know that we do have the power to silence and mute somebody who is not adhering to those rules and refuses to come into compliance. I issue some caution when utilizing that power, as it will escalate the situation. In some instances, it will build resentment, and we have an increased possibility of that player walking out the door for good. Some people may say good riddance, but I would like to remind everyone that a bad day doesn't constitute a bad person, and that a bad choice today doesn't mean that they will be a bad choice tomorrow. There is always the opportunity in the choice to do and be better. The bulk of what we'll be discussing today is related to the Thomas Kilmann conflict model, which is a great model for dealing with, well, conflict. There are many videos that you can watch that can address this in a lot of different ways. But what they come to is that no one element of the model is better than the others, and that there's a time to utilize every single strategy. As mentors, we should become familiar with every type of model of conflict so that we can recognize when somebody's competing, when somebody's willing to compromise, when somebody's looking to collaborate, when somebody can be accommodating, or when somebody is avoiding conflict, so that we can develop proper strategies to bring a conflict to resolution. There is a place and time for each and every one of these, which is something that only comes at the end of most videos related to the subject. The first part of this that we'll talk about is competing, and this is typically when there's a disagreement or when there's a conflict. You'll have somebody who asserts that they are correct, that they have the right idea, and that they have the solution to the problem, and everybody should just listen to them. A great example of this might be in the conflict video that we've had at Underdunk, where one player was telling the other person what they needed to do and was swearing at them and getting agitated at them because the other person wasn't doing what they wanted them to do. The person instigating that conflict at that time was looking to compete. He wanted people to listen to what he had to say. He was not willing to compromise or collaborate with anybody else, and he wanted to assert himself on to the others. When somebody is competing, we have typically two different strategies that we can employ. At times, we can avoid conflict altogether. It takes two people to talk. So we can be dismissive. We can say, yep, sure, I'll do that next time, and not offer anything new to the conversation. They might continue to instigate, and in which case we might have to physically remove ourselves or ask to talk about a later time to defer the conversation until then. Alternatively, we can accommodate. So rather than just dismiss of what they have said, if they said that we were terrible, that we were bad, or that we got to exactly what they were trying to say, which is we needed to rotate at a certain time, or we needed to do a certain activity, rather than argue with them at a time that they're trying to compete and are unwilling to collaborate or compromise, I can just accommodate. I can say, yep, for today, I'll do it your way. For this next game, I'll give that a try. If you don't compete with them, there's not a competition to be had, and the conflict typically goes away. Now, not everybody likes to accommodate all the time. They have their own impressions, they have their own ego, they have their own opinions and emotions, and nobody likes to feel like a doormat. And so what typically happens with conflict is you'll have two people competing, and what we'll have to do as mentors is try to get them to a compromise, a temporary solution, or redirect the conversation to something that they can collaborate on and move in the same direction. So a compromise is a band-aid solution that will help them come up with something that they can do for the next immediate game or for the rest of the session. And it may just be while you're playing together, how about at 8 minutes, you call for the rotation and he responds to the call, whether he can make it or not, and you will adapt to what he says if he can go. You give them a role, you give them a task, you give them an agreement so they know what they're supposed to do, and they might workshop it a bit, and you can ask what would work for you, what would work for you, let's try that. And most people, if they got some type of consideration or some type of, the other person conceded to some degree, they will feel like they came away with enough that they can move forward, and that continued conflict is not worth it. Alternatively, you can try to redirect them and focus on what they both want. An argument about a play, an argument about a game, ultimately comes down to they want to win and they have an idea on how best to get there. If you identify, look, you're both trying to win, you both want to win the game, what are some things that we can both do to improve for the next game? Then they might have a suggestion for the other on how they might better be able to work together, and then start bouncing ideas off of each other. Lead the conversation around what they both want to do, because that's where they have the most common ground. There are times when people are so competitive and unwilling to compromise or unwilling to collaborate and unwilling to be accommodating of one another that you just have to remove them. A big thing about working in conflict resolution is knowing to remove the audience. You want to avoid a power struggle with whoever you're having to conflict with, especially as a mediator. The moment you get in a power struggle with them, you're now competing with them rather than assisting them to compromise or collaborate. And so one way that you can avoid doing that is to remove the audience. If I'm going to challenge your competence or challenge your idea in front of other people, you may be worried about how you look compared to your friends or to your peers or to your teammates or people that you want to like you, to respect you, to think you are smart, or to think that you are competent. And if I try to challenge that idea, you are put in a position where if you can't agree with me, you have to fight me or look stupid. If you remove that audience, that pressure is no longer there, and it's a lot easier to get people to compromise or collaborate. This is one of the reasons why I strongly discourage the idea of using the mute button unless absolutely necessary. If you are to use that button in front of a public audience when they are trying to compete, you are now asserting yourself over them, meaning that they have to challenge back, they have to push back because they don't want to look weak. They don't want to look like a fool. They don't want to look like an idiot. They don't want to look like they are the ones in trouble or that they're the ones with the problem. They don't want to look bad. And so this will prompt them and escalate their behavior in a negative way. One thing you can do, a great strategy, is something we called redirection. Can I talk to you privately real quick? Do you mind hopping in another call real quick? May I have your attention for a moment? Here, let's go over to that call so we can handle that there. Having those type of redirections, pulling them to a private call or probing them to a private sector, sends a message that the way that they're conducting themselves cannot continue, and it gives them an appropriate out to talk with you one-on-one about the scenario and why their behavior currently is inappropriate. If you're unable to redirect them to a private call and remove the audience, you can also redirect them to a different topic altogether. This is an avoidance strategy. If they're talking about the Ray fight and what they could have done better and they're starting to call each other names, you can start talking about a different play. You can start talking about the next game. You can start talking about a new activity altogether. Hey, do you guys want to play Repeat Repo? Do you guys want to play Among Us? Do you guys want to try out that volleyball real quick? Who's up for that? This gives people a way to avoid the conflict and come back later when they're in a better mindset, where they're no longer looking to compete, where the stakes are no longer high, and they're no longer in a crisis mindset. I have one more technique that I'd like to teach you guys today called real-time permission. Real-time permission is a mediation technique coming from Patrick Lenconi, who wrote the book called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which is a great book on how to make a productive and collaborative team culture. This technique is something that's a little bit more involved, and so if you don't feel comfortable utilizing this technique, if you feel there's some potential backlash, or that it's just more than you agreed to sign up for when you became a mentor, that is A-okay. You can simply try to de-escalate the situation. You can redirect them to a new topic, a new game, a new activity. You can invite them to a private call to talk one-on-one. And if all those things fail, you can simply mute them until they are ready to conduct themselves as a respectable and responsible adult. Something often forgotten is that what we say is not what other people hear. And so we can think that we're being reasonable, that we're being respectful, that we're being logical, and that the other party should just understand what we're saying. However, while we'll think we're sounding like that to everybody else, we might actually look like some of the world's biggest asses. Oh, actually, it used to be Jack. Something often forgotten is that what we say is not what other people hear. And while we think we're being polite, respectful, logical, and making perfect sense, we might end up coming across as some big, serious jackasses to the other party. And this is something that happens all too frequently. If you spend any time in esports at all, everybody thinks they're the one, that they're the guy, that they're the top player, that they have all the information and everybody should just listen to them, and that they're speaking in such a way that makes absolute sense, and that speaking aggressively and in a heated tone and speaking in a frustrated manner is something that is typical, that's normal, that should be expected, that people should just accept it. But it's not. And so what real-time permission is, it's a mediation technique which gives permission for each party to share their grievances while reminding them and giving them specific rules to follow. And so if I had a player number 1, we'll call them, yelling at player number 2 over some corrective plays that they can make, and they were swearing at them about it, real-time permission would be asking this player to rephrase or to restate what they want from player number 2 without swearing and without yelling at them. If you swear or yell, you can say, look, we can't speak that way while we're here. We made an agreement when you joined the First Steps series. Please try again without swearing. And if they refuse the second time, mute them, conflict is done, and you move on. Now, if they do, and I would like to think that they will comply and restate what they're trying to say to the other party without swearing or yelling, you can then address player number 2 and say, all right, please respond to that without yelling or swearing back at them. And when they're done responding to the criticism, you can then say, it sounded to me like you had something you wanted to say to them about the way that they were speaking to you. What are your expectations for player number 1 about how they talk to you going forward for the rest of the night, or for the rest of the time that you guys interact here? And they might say, look, you can give me your criticism, you can share your complaints with me. I would love to hear what you have to say about how I can get better. I just ask that when you do so, you don't yell at me, you don't call me names, you don't insult me or swear at me, and that if you're feeling frustrated, you take a moment to catch your breath before you tell me what you'd like me to do. And you can go to person number 1 and say, does that sound fair? And most of the time they'll say, yeah, I can do that. And if they say, no, I refuse to do that, and then you can say, well, if you refuse to do that, we can't allow you to play here. Which can escalate the conflict, but you have to have somebody that's willing to compromise. That's their willingness to compromise when you ask them, does that sound fair? And most of the time, yeah, okay, I can agree to do that. You have a compromise. You're going to conduct yourselves going forward. Everybody got permission to share what they wanted to share, and they're reminded of the rules of engagement. If at any point in time, either party refuses to conduct themselves in a responsible manner, you can mute them, and remind them that they can try again tomorrow as long as they're willing to follow those rules. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you would like more discussion, more tools, or more things that you can do, leave it in the comment section below or send me a private DM. We can schedule a one-on-one or a workshop so that we can talk about other conflict resolution techniques that you can employ as mentors of the Underdunk First Steps program. Thank you so much for watching my video.